Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly shirim on the Ramchal's Adir BaMarom commentary to the Ijer Rabbah, and we're moving deeper into the sugya of tikkun. What we left off with was how tohu and chaos represents time consciousness, and how time consciousness ultimately brings about a sense of living where it's one thing and then another thing. And because there's this transition between things, there's always a fear of scarcity or something moving too quickly or not quick enough. And that is the symptom of time that congeals into the chaos of this world. And ultimately, the goal is to elevate time back up to Nitzchias, to show how, in truth, the way that time was supposed to come out, had it not been for the original transgression of Adam Harishon, it would have been that everything was always revealed. And the fact that more than one thing was revealed did not detract from one's ability to see everything in each and everything. And that nitzchias means that everything exists at the same time, but nothing takes away from another thing. And we live in the opposite of nitzchias. We live in chaye sha'a, we live in temporality, where it feels that because of the fragmentation of time, everything is in a perpetual rush. And the goal of rectification, the goal of tikkun, is to slowly but surely bring calmness, draw nitzchias back into that time orientation, to begin to live our lives with the perspective that what is right in front of me holds everything. And for us to enter into that place of the eight, the time beyond time, the time where everything is in front of me and I'm free from that scatteredness. We see from the Maharal already that in order to understand something fully, you have to understand its opposite. So, in order to understand the role of the tikkun and rectification and the purpose of creation of the world, which is the work of the human being and the work of tikkun, so we have to understand the symptoms of the shattering. And one of the main symptoms of the shattering we see is zman nakat. It takes time into consideration. And we also said that the partsufim, the shemos of Hashem that came out during the zman of the shvira, were ma and ben, the vav and the hey, which begematria is zman, meaning to say that our whole orientation towards this worldliness is nekudos, is separate points of atomized time that is separate from each and every other moment. And it puts us into a perspective of zmanim mitchalfin, changing time, time that changes. Because everything nowadays in the process of tikkun, prior to the actual rectification of the tikkun, is still going to feel fragmented. So we said that there's ultimately three stages, right? There's before the tikkun, which is tohu. There's the process of the tikkun, which is the beginning of rectification. And there's going to be the completion of the tikkun, which is going to be that which comes about with Mashiach Tzidkenu. And the way that this expressed itself in the Kabbalah of the Arizal, as the Ramchal is telling us, is that in the time of Shvira, the light of Atzilus didn't come out. And all that fell down and all that emerged were the worlds of separation, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, which without the unifying principle of Chachma, they break apart into fragmentation. The work of Tikkun, the middle period, is to clarify and dig down deep into the broken vessels and to reveal a latent wholeness that exists within the brokenness itself, which is not the true level of wholeness that's going to be revealed in the future, but it's a momentary level of wholeness that will enable us to get to the full measure of wholeness in the future. And that's the ability to uncover the light of Atzilus that's embedded within the worlds of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. And when we can uncover that light of Atzilus within Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, we bring about a tikkun to the brokenness, and then the brokenness can be elevated to bring about the ultimate tikkun. And so right now, the Ramchal is going to be describing to us the initial stages of the middle period, which is the time of tikkun. How do tikkunim work? How do we break free from the time consciousness, and how do we awaken within ourselves that ahavas netzach, that eternality, that eternal nature of things that is always present no matter what a person is going through. And so the language of the Zohar Kadosh is as follows: "The basar zimna have mistakil bahahu parsa." Last two shirim were on those two words, Ulabasar Zimna, and it was afterwards. But now we're focusing on Mistakel Bahuhu Parsa, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol, the light of Adam Kadmon that was going to emerge for the Tikkun. It looked at the Parsa, it looked at that partition, that blockage that blocked all of the lights from coming out, which was ultimately what it calls the Shvira. V'itatken betukonayu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu began to rectify the rectifications. Again, we've said that all tikkunim rectifications are contraction devices for the sake of revelation. that they're measuring devices that enable us to manage the flow of infinite light so that it not overwhelm us like it did in the time of shattering, and rather that we can condense it and we can contain it so that it can be revealed in a measurable, rectified way. That's what a tikkun is. That's what a levush is. It's something that conceals in order to reveal. The ta'ana kadsalit v'ru'usa l'mirvei v'raisa tmira trei alfin shonin. And the Zohar Kadosh continues, and it says, in the moment that it arose within the unfathomable will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create the world, the Torah had been hidden away already for 2,000 millennia. Va'afka, and it came out. Umiyad amre kaime, and immediately the Torah says in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Man deboy le'tatkan l'meved yitakin b'kadmisa tikunai. That first and foremost, somebody who wants to enter into the world of rectification, somebody who wants to learn what it means to have tikkun and order in their lives, to pull us out of the chaos, it has to be with the Torah. And this is what the Ramchal is going to begin to give us right now, how the tikkun is fundamentally attached to the Torah, and how the Torah is ultimately going to be how we draw nitzchias down into Zman, and how we draw down the infinite light of prior to creation, even into exile. The Heiliger Ramchal says as follows, V'amar, L'basar zimna havi mistakel b'hahu parsa v'etatken v'tukunai. And after that time, after the shattering, a gaze was gazed at the parsa, and the rectifications began. Va'inyan, ki kvar shamata eich hatikunim tzrichim lahatchil lamala l'tzarech hatikunim hatachtonim. So we already know that even if the problem is all the way down below, and the rectification has to take place on lower levels, the only way to get to the lower levels is to begin the rectification at the highest levels, because there is nothing that can take place below in a way of fixing that's not going to be fundamentally rooted in a fixing that's taking place in the upper echelons, in the upper levels of the system. Why? Because there's no symptom that we find low down that can't be traced all the way back up to the beginning of the system. And one of the reasons that we want to focus so much on rectifying the rectifications at the tippy top point, instead of beginning with the rectifications on the lowest parts, is something that Ravitcher Meyer Shlita always points out, which is the derech of the Baal Shem Tov, which is that when we start fixing that which is clarified, then it's going to be far easier for us to deal with that which is not clarified. But God forbid, if a person starts off with something that's not clarified and they're trying to make their way back up to clarity, that's going to be a lot more difficult. So when tikkunim start, when we want to start fixing something, we don't look at that which is broken. We don't go down into the symptoms or the post-traumatic symptoms of it all, but rather we start off with that which is working. We start off with the general principle where light can still be found, even if it's not felt. And when we attach ourselves to that lofty place where light can still be found, even if it's not felt, then we can draw it down into the places that we don't even think that life is found anymore. And so the Ramchal says that all tikkunim, all rectifications that need to take place down below, they begin above. So we see how nothing can be fixed down below if it doesn't start being fixed above. But what we also see is that the purpose of the eventual fixing that's taking place above is also to enable the fixing down below, which means to say that the main place that Hashem wants that fixing to emerge is ultimately down below. V'hinei ha'atika kadisha haniska lamala, shehu soid adam kadmon, haya mistakel b'parsa. ולפי מה שהיה צריך לפרסה מפני הקלקולים הראשונים ולצורך התיקון הרואי להתקן, כך היה הוא מתתקן לתועלת התחתונים. So the Ramchal says, what is Atika Kadisha here? Atika Kadisha means the ancient one, the ancientness of all ancientness. Not Atik Yoimin of Keser, but Atika Kadisha, which is even more concealed than the concealment of Keser. Now, it's still a revelation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though there's going to be times where we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Atika Kadisha, we're referring to this original elevated revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Machshava Keduma of Adam Kadmon, and that's referred to as Atika Kadisha. So in the time of the Shvira, lights came out from the lower parts of Adam Kadmon. The lights came out from the Oznayim, the Shem Sag, Kulam Sag Yachtav. That was the reason for the Shvira that we didn't have Chachma. We only started with Bina, which is Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. But at the time of the tikkun, what's happening is that there's an emergence of a new light that's coming from the pnimiyut of Chachma, which is going to be the Shem Maha Chadash, something new that wasn't revealed beforehand. And in order to awaken that desire, it's going to come from the loftiest places of Atika Kadisha. And so the tikkunim are that Atika Kadisha Adam Kadmon, from the perspective of now knowing what needs to be fixed, it's looking down at the parsa, that partition that rests between the lower part of Adam Kadmon, which is where the lights came out in the Shira, and the upper parts of Adam Kadmon, which are the lights of Tikkun, are going to come out. So that new orientation, that new ha'ara, that machshava kaduma of Adam Kadmon to fix the entire Welt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks down and he starts making all of the tikkunim that were necessary. And again, all of the tikkunim are ultimately so that the lower worlds can come about, so that we can actually engage in the work. And the Ramchal says, I'm going to explain to you the matter. What's this looking? Why, when we talk about the beginning of tikkun, why, when we talk about the rectification of the worlds, we use a language of he gazed, that Adam Kadmon Kavyachol gazed at the parsa. It looked, it used its eyes, so to say. And we're going to see also that in the Arizal, the entire tikkun of the Olamos is the lights that come out of the eyes. The Shvira took place, the lights that come out of the ears, so to say, the Derech Mashal, the Shem Havaya of Sag, which come from the Oznayim of Adam Kadmon, from the ears of Adam Kadmon. Not the interiority, but the externalization of Adam Kadmon from the level of the ears, which is where all of the dinim took place, because Bina is rooted in din. But the tikkun is going to take place through the eyes, through the Maha Chadash, that new light that comes out of the Oros Ha'inayim to be metakin zayin, to fix everything. It's a new way of looking. It's the source of looking. It's going to be the source, the highest place of looking, a new way of looking. V'ha'inyan kisoid ha'inayim hu hashkacha v'ha'ara mizeh lezeh. Says the Ramchal, based on the Arizal, that vision is not simply me looking out onto something and my eyes perceiving that thing, but rather vision is a bilateral relationship, that by looking out, I develop a relationship with the thing that I'm looking at, which is why the eyes are the most delicate place in the world. And there's a relationship formed between the seer and the thing that's being seen. That it's not just that the seer gets to see what's being seen, it's that the seer, by way of seeing, actually imposes a certain illumination from the eyes, and it attaches itself towards the thing being seen, and the thing being seen awakens in turn, and it responds, and it gives itself over to the thing that is seeing it. As Rabbi Nachman describes, that histaklis oisa kli, that looking enables me to draw something down into reality itself. And so the beginning of the rectification is the development of the relationship. And the proof of this is that someone who sees something, the seer, the thing that's being seen is formed within their eyesight. And as a result of the formation of the thing that's being seen, there's an awakening, there's a movement, there's something that is churning, there's a response taking place. So that the looking out to the parsa is not just to look out to the parsa, but by looking out onto the parsa, there's an awakening that the parsa creates within the machshava kaduma of Adam Kadmon to be motzi, the or of tikkun, which we're going to see is the light of the Torah that comes out. That Atika Kadisha, the rectification, the new light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired to enable for the world of Tikkun to take place, it comes out. And what that means is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by gazing at the Parsa, what he's doing is he's calculating and determining exactly what the rectifications of Hashkacha are going to be, the way in which God relates to the world, the Tikkunim, and how it's going to be able to be fixed. And as a result of the gazing down at the Parsa, there was a Ha'alas Man, there was an awakening of a feminine response from the thing that was being looked at, which is the parsa. And as a result of that awakening, there's a new light that's going to unfold. Every new light needs to have a certain preparatory stage of desire. And this looking outwards, this zivug of the einayim begins to awaken the desire for there to be a maha chadash to come out, a new light that's going to come out. And as a result of looking down below, it awoken the desire back above to reveal the new light. And what's that new light? That new light is going to be the Torah. The Olam HaTikun is the light of the Torah. It comes and it organizes, it comes and it makes meaning, it comes and it balances. And as a result of this relationship of Atika Kadisha, Pnimius of Adam Kadmon, from the Ha'ara of the Maha Chadash, that's going to rectify the broken worlds, that's going to create equanimity, and it's going to create a balancing scale, which is going to balance between the lights and the vessels. So by way of looking at the Parsa Kavyachol, the Pnimius of Adam Kadmon is awoken to reveal the new light. And this new light of Maha Chadash, this new light of rectification, this new possibility of the world, which really starts with Avram Avinu, as the Ramchal spends so much time pointing out. It's the Torah HaKaduma, it's the Derech Eretz Shekadma Torah, but the emergence of Tikkun is the Torah. The tohu is without Torah, and the tikkun is the Torah. The Torah illuminates, the Torah gives shape, the Torah measures, and the Torah creates systems of meaning. Vinyan haTorah hu sod gadol, because in truth, the matter of the Torah is the deepest secret imaginable. Kini anu oimrim shekolam oiresim b'Torah. Because ultimately we know that all of the revelations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and everything that's going to take shape throughout history, before history, during history, and after the afterness of history, is all contained within the Torah. As the Vilna Gaon writes so many times in his Perush on Safar Ditznius, so that everything from then, now, and that which will be is contained within the Torah. There's nothing that's not found in the Torah. And therefore, the Torah is obviously going to be something more than what we see in the revealed elements of the Torah to us, the way that we understand the Torah. Now, that's not to say that the way that the Torah is revealed to us is missing anything, God forbid. It just means that we have not yet even begun to uncover the true potency within the Torah. As we've said so often in the name of the Gra and the Baal Shem Tov, that Torah Hashem Tamima, which means to say that even after all has been said and done and revealed and discussed and expounded upon and expanded upon in the Torah, nevertheless, if we were to hold all of that and put it on a scale, it would not even bend the scale one iota in accordance to the true measure of the Torah, which is just the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it has the ability of being Mechayim Esim at every moment. And the Torah is the light of illumination. The Torah is the light of Malbush. It's the highest light imaginable. It's the deepest desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal the Torah, which is the source of Nishmas Yisrael. And so we know that the Torah is far bigger than what we understand it to be, which is why we study it so much and why we attach ourselves to it and why we know Lule Sarascha Sha'ashuaya Zavaditi Bioni, without the life-giving Torah of the tzaddikim, we wouldn't have life. And so we know that the first rectification that Hashem needed to reveal in the times of Tikkun was the light of the Torah. Aval tzarich lahavin inyan zeh, but we have to understand this matter. She'eich ne'emar shehi haita genusa alpayim shana im haya hakol. How can we say that the Torah has everything? How can we say that the Torah contains everything if we're talking about now that it was hidden away for 2,000 years? How can we say that it's the kol? How can we say that it was concealed and not revealed? And furthermore, you're talking about the loftiest light of the Torah. But when we look at the Seder Hashtalshalos and we're looking at what each sphera means and we're looking at the names associated with the spheros, we find that the Torah is associated with the sphera of Tiferes. That when looking at the spheros themselves, Tiferes is not the uppermost sphera, it's not the lowest sphera, it's the mid sphera. But how can we say that the Torah, which is the source of all things, which is the source of all illumination that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals into the world, how can we say that it's revealed in Tiferes? And how can we say that something that's identified as Tiferes isn't actually going to be something that contains all of it within it? And it's not only about the sphera of Tiferes here, even if we want to say that the Torah is oriented towards the parts of Zer Anpin, still Zer Anpin is not the loftiest parts of, right? It's a very important parts of, as we're going to see. In fact, it's going to be the most important parts of Kavyachol. But in terms of the emergence from the divine will, there's Keser, which is split into Atik Yoimin and Arich Anpin, and then there's Abba Ve'ima, and then there's Yisrael Saba Ve'tfuna, and then and only then do we find Zer Anpin, which then merges with Malchus. So if Zer Anpin is identified with the Torah, and the Torah is identified with Gans Alts and everything at once, so how does this align? We have a discrepancy. And in truth, the problem is not so much on the Torah. If we're saying the Torah is whole and you're saying it's by Zer Anpin, then it means that the Torah is smaller than we're saying with it. God forbid, the Torah is that big, then how can we be calling it Zer Anpin? So why would we be referring to something as Torah or Zer Anpin if they're one and the same? We have to understand that everything is obviously explicit for a reason, and we have to understand exactly what's being conveyed. So the shaila here again that the Ramchal is giving us is as follows. The beginning of the rectification of all things begins with the light of the Torah emerging. And the light of the Torah is the source of all things and all illumination. And it's rooted ultimately back in the Kav. It's even rooted in a higher source than the light of the Tikkun. But if that's the case, then why is it that when we talk about the Torah in terms of its orientation point in the Seder Hashtalshalos, we don't see that it represents everything? Adir, we see that it represents a lower point, something associated with Tiferes and Zer Anpin. So what the Ramchal is going to come to describe to us is how it is and why it is that the emergence of the Torah is in truth the emergence of rectification, and why it specifically has to express itself in the realm of Tiferes. And we're going to understand what the Ramchal means when he says that the beginning of Tikkun is the Torah. So says the Heilige Ramchal, Acha inyan da, ki l'chol ma'or yesh segula pratit, ולפי הסגולה ההיא פועלים כל שאר המאורות, כי כולם נכנסים בכל פעולה מפני ההסכמה, וזה כבר מבואר בכמה מקומות. Now, the Ramchal is addressing why is it that we're saying that the revelation of the Torah is most fundamentally revealed through the Partzuf of Zer Anpin, which is theoretically a lower Partzuf. And we're here describing the Torah as the emergence of Tikkun, as the purpose of the entirety of existence. So what we're trying to understand is how to bridge the tippy top point with the Partzuf of Zer Anpin. So the Ramchal is saying that we know that every light that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals into the world, every ontological expression of divinity, or a revelation. Every yontif has a new ma'or, a new ha'ara that's coming out. Every day has a new ha'ara. Every tefillah has a new ha'ara. Every mitzvah has a new ha'ara. Every element of the soul has a new ha'ara, and every element of existence has its own ha'ara. Those are all rooted in the innumerable lights, the ma'orot that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal in the world. And like we just said, in the time of Tohu, each Ma'or has to go one after the other after the other. They can't all be revealed at once. But in truth, Nitzchias is when all of the Ma'oros, all of the illumination and potencies are revealed at once, and each person can have a grasp of Eilamecha Tira B'chayecha. But when it comes to the revelation of the Ma'oros, each Ma'or has its own quality. Now, let's say the Ma'oros are going to be referred to as the Partzufim. So we have the Ma'or of Keser, the Ma'or of Chachma, the Ma'or of Bina, the Ma'or of Zer Anpin, and the Ma'or of Malchus. Each and every one of those Partzufim has its own thing to reveal. Now, none of those Partzufim can function without all of the other Partzufim intertwined and interengaged with it. But in the moment that each particular Partzuf is revealing itself, that means that all of the other Partzufim, which represent other kochos and other strengths, are now unifying together to agree that all energy should be focused on this particular expression. So when it's time for Zer Anpin to reveal itself fundamentally, it doesn't mean that at the expense of Keser's revelation or Chachma's revelation or Bina's revelation or Malchus's revelation. Adrabah, Ipcha Mistabra. All of those upper partsufim have now joined together B'darach Haskama, which is his klalus v'his kashrus, an inter-inclusion, which is something that marks the world of rectification by contradistinction to the solipsistic egoism of Olam HaTohu, which is Ana Emloch, where each one didn't want to share. In a time of Tikkun, everything is working together, and it doesn't deny the individual identity of each and every partzuf. It's just that the individualized identity of the partzuf is driven by and motivated by the coalescence of all of the other partzufim at the very same time. And so, we have to understand at each and every parts of each and every illumination has its own particular expression. And another way of saying this is that the Shem Havaya is composed of different letters, 4 letters with the Kutzer Shal Yud, which represents the 5 partsufim. So theoretically, each and every one of those letters represents something different. And in the illumination of one letter, it would be the decreasing of another letter. But in the time of Tikkun, what we understand is that that's not the case. Each and every letter contains all of the letters within it. The Kutzer Shal Yud has its own Shem Havaya, and the Yud has its own Shem Havaya, and the Hey has its own Shem Havaya, and the Vav has its own Shem Havaya, and the Hey has its own Shem Havaya. It's just that all of the Shemos are going to coalesce together in accordance with the particular expression that is needed. As the Ramchal says, Ki kulam nichnasim b'chol pa'ula mipnei hahaskama, that all of the other partsufim agreed to reveal themselves in that way. And we know that this is the nature of Olam HaTikun. V'nei b'Zohar Amru, the Zohar Kadosh says, Shakadosh Baruch Hu v'Yisrael v'Atayra hakol davar echad. Right? Kud shebrichu oraisu b'nei Yisrael chadhu. That the Torah, that Hashem, the Torah and Nishmas Yisrael are ultimately fundamentally connected. They're tlas kishrin da b'da. 3 rings in a chain that are fundamentally connected and inseparable from one another. Hashem, the Torah, and Nishmas Yisrael. And what the Ramchal is going to explain to us here when he says, V'tzarech lahavin ze inyan heitev, we have to understand what this means. He's going to give us the answer as to why it is that the Torah is the source of all of rectification, and it expresses itself specifically by way of Tiferes, and then from there it's going to extend into Nishmas Yisrael. That the original Tikkun is the light of the Torah as it exists by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the shorish of all the Ma'oros, the shorish of all that which is going to unfold in the realm of Tikkun from now until the coming of Mashiach and beyond. But the ultimate purpose of all of the Ma'oros coming out into Metzius is not for the Malachim, it's not for the revelation of spiritual potencies, it's not for the Nisim, but it's for Nishmas Yisrael, the Iker Giloi of Tikkun is in Nishmas Yisrael that has the access to receive the Torah. But here we're talking about the Torah that's Kadma L'Olam. This is even before Matan Torah, which we're going to see how the Torah mends itself and addresses itself in accordance with the needs of Nishmas Yisrael, so to say. But over here, we're seeing that the apex, the upper roots of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire to be matakin the Welt is referred to as that light of the Torah. And then that light of the Torah comes through specifically Tiferes. Why specifically Tiferes? Because Tiferes is identified with Yaakov, and Yaakov is the emergence of Nishmas Yisrael. And the main place in which the Torah is going to be revealed is through Nishmas Yisrael. And that those foolish individuals who stand up for the Torah, but not for the Talmidei Chachamim who learn the Torah. Because the Iker Giloy of the Torah is not the Torah itself, but it's the Giloy of the Torah within Nishmas Yisrael. And so what we're going to see is that the original light of the Torah is the light of Tikkun, that's oriented towards the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the original Chachma Kaduma that Hashem wants to reveal in the world, the Torah's Hashem. And then it gets revealed in particular through the parts of Zer Anpin, through the sphere of Tiferes, which is the place of Yaakov, which is where the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kavyachol, emerges into the Torah as we understand it. And the reason it comes from there is because that's going to be the source of Nishmas Yisrael. So we see it's Hashem, the Torah, and then Nishmas Yisrael. The ultimate purpose of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's revelation of his Ratzon HaKadum is to reveal itself within the Torah. The ultimate purpose of the Torah is to reveal Nishmas Yisrael, and the ultimate purpose of Nishmas Yisrael is to follow through with the Torah to reveal more of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so now we can understand that this original primordial Torah that contains all things within itself, prior to even the Aleph base, prior to the Aleph of Anoichi, it's the potentiality of the Torah, it's the Reish Lamed Aleph Sha'arim of pure potentiality, of Torah Hashem Tamima. Its first extension and its main place in which it's going to express is going to be in the Osios of Nishmas Yisrael, which is the parts of Zer Anpin, and from there Nishmas Yisrael is going to come out. And so we see the Ramchal is giving us a really fundamental introduction here to the world of Tikkun to ensure that we know what's what. The main purpose of everything is so that Nishmas Yisrael can be matakin what it needs to be matakin. This is the whole purpose for all of the Shvira. And this is why the main place in which the Torah is going to reveal itself is going to be specifically through the parts of Zer Anpin, through the Midah of Tiferes, because that's Nishmas Yisrael. Ach sarich sheteda, says the Ramchal, ki haneshamois yoitzois min ha'ma'oros. The neshamos are extensions from the partzufim and from the sviros and from the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is fearing the Welt in the upper echelons of society in the realms of Olam HaAtzilus. Those are the emergence of the Ma'oros. But the main point of the Ma'oros is so that the Neshamos, Nishmas Yisrael, and the particularized form of Nishmas Yisrael should come into existence. Ube'emes kol ha'Ma'oros kulam mirosh ha'Atzilus va'ad soif ha'Asiya yatsu mehem Neshamos. There's no element of any of the Ma'oros from the beginning of the world of Atzilus down to the world of Asiya, none of the Partzufim that are not fundamentally there for the purpose of Nishmas Yisrael. The only purpose of this is Nishmas Yisrael. If there was no Hiskal, no revelation that would take shape within the souls of Klal Yisrael to reveal the inherent power and illumination that rests within each and every one of us, then that Gilui would not have taken place, as we're going to see later on. We have to make sure that this principle, this general principle, is always, always, always in front of our minds and always in our hands, mean ready at hand in order to use it properly. That even though the partzufim and the upper ma'oros are how anything gets done, the thing that motivates the orientation or the posture in which those partzufim are going to take is going to be the giloy that's going to come out from them, which is Nishmas Yisrael. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Meaning, even though in the machshava tchila we're dealing with the illuminated places of Hashem's revelation through the ma'oros, nevertheless, that which is going to determine the way those ma'oros are going to unfold is actually going to be the sof ma'aseh, which is going to be Nishmas Yisrael. That the ikar way in which the spheros reveal themselves is to draw out Nishmas Yisrael, And therefore, the main way in which the Torah is going to reveal itself, even though it can reveal itself in any way, it's going to be directly through the lens of the parts of Zer Anpin, through Nishmas Yisrael. V'nei ha'aras ha'tzviros lahotzaos ha'neshamos hi ha'ara hayoter ikari. There are many ways and many things that Hashem wants to reveal in the Welt. Many potencies, many strengths, many giluyim, and every aspect of existence is a giluy. There's nothing that takes place in this world that's not a giluy of Kvod Shemayim, that's not a giluy of Elokus. But the main and most fundamental way in which the Gilei Elokus is going to take shape is going to be through Nishmas Yisrael. That's the most essential way. Shekol Shar HaHa'aros Hem Aleha Kamo Anafim. Everything else other than Nishmas Yisrael is going to be considered secondary and derivative to the fundamental expression of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal is Nishmas Yisrael. B'nei ha'espashtus hazeh shel ha'ma'oros lahoitzi ha'neshamis shu b'koyach chadash. The way in which Nishmas Yisrael is going to be able to emerge from within the original Gilui of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon to the Torah is going to have to go through a Koyach Chadash, a Ma HaChadash. The Shem Ma is associated with Zer Anpin and Teferes. Even though it's the rectification, it doesn't seem to be the highest name. But the reason the rectification is this name is because the main rectification is going to be through Nishmas Yisrael. Vadai behem, there has to be a new strength revealed. Milvad hakoach hatzarech lehem la'atzmam. Right, in order for these ma'oros to emerge in the most fundamentally pointed way, which is going to be aligned with the desire for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, new light had to come in. It couldn't be working with the same limited economy that was revealed in the time of Tohu, and there had to be a new light. And this new light that is going to enable the eventual emergence of Nishmas Yisrael is going to be the Torah that Hashem is revealing in the world. Because in truth, Nishmas Yisrael is like the Torah itself. Every neshama is an os in the Torah, and that os gets to be extended through every other os in the Torah, which means that each and every person sees the entirety of the Torah through their own lens, through their own particular neshama, through their own particular understanding, that the person themselves is the best interpretive device for the Torah itself, because each and every person is receiving their own nakuda and their own os. So if the purpose of all revelation is ultimately going to be for Nishmas Yisrael to come about, and the only way for Nishmas Yisrael to come about is by way of the revelation of the Torah, so then the first revelation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals is the Torah, so that eventually Nishmas Yisrael can come out. That the Torah itself is the purpose and the root source of Nishmas Yisrael. Each and every person has their own chiddush in Torah. Each and every person has that which needs to be mevurar. And the Torah is mitzias. The Torah doesn't only mean the 5 books of Moshe Rabbeinu and Torah Sheba'al Peh. It means the mitzias of seeing chachma in each and everything. V'nimsa sheyesh gimel devarim. So the Ramchal says now we can understand this statement from the Zohar that there's a unity between God, which is the original desire for Tikkun, the Torah, which is the beginningness of Tikkun, and Nishmas Yisrael, which is the purpose of Tikkun. Nimsa sheyesh gimel devarim. There's 3 things that are going on here. There's the ma'oros. That's going to be the illumination and the partzufim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends down, which is contained within the Torah. Haneshamos hayoytzim mehem, the souls that emerge from those ha'aros, which is the tachlis and of the bria, to illuminate a little bit more of Nishmas Yisrael into the belt. And the way in which these ma'oros can now unfold in order for the souls to unfold. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the source of all of the ma'oros. There's the neshamos that are yoitzimehem, which is the shorish of the Torah. And there's the hispashtus of the ma'oros, la'asos and neshamos, which is what happens through the Torah itself. Ve'elu gimel devarim heim, and these 3 things are kutchabrichu, Torah v'Yisrael, v'havein ma'od. The ma'oros, the shorish of the lights, is kutchabrichu. The revelation that the souls are contained within that first ma'or is the Torah itself. And then the emergence of the neshama from within the Torah, that's Yisrael, v'havein ma'od, and we have to understand this. We've already explained, and it's going to be much later on for the Ramchal here, it seems that past, present, and future don't mean so much. So sometimes he'll describe something that's going to be described much later on as something that's already been described. Now we're going to see why Nishmas Yisrael is the essential thing, why through our Bechira that we have the ability of drawing down the deepest light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how everything else, v'chol hashar tefelos alah, everything else can be considered as secondary, not better or worse, just secondary. B'shar ha'aros and all other lights, hinehem lahoitzi ha'malachim v'chol shar minei habrios lefi ha'ara zaisi anhaga ikars. Because there's so many lights, there's so many giluyim, like the malachim and all of the ilamos and all of the merkavos and all of the hechalos, but none of those stand in the face of the Iker Giloi, which is Nishmas Yisrael. And that's why the Torah reveals itself most specifically in the parts of Zer Anpin, because other parts of other spheros are set aside for other revelations. But over here, by the parts of Zer Anpin, we see it's the emergence of Nishmas Yisrael. I knew Amnan ha'emesu, the truth of the matter is, Shahat Tiferes hu sod Yaakov. The parts of Zer Anpin is Nishmas Yisrael, is Yaakov Avinu, Yisrael Saba, hu hamor haprati sheyesh lo segula hahi. Segula Azois Lahamshich is Pashta Zula Tzorech Neshamos. Only Nishmas Yisrael in its root, only the parts of Zer Anpin, Banamatam Hashem Lekechem, the light of Yaakov Avinu, the light of the Avos Hakadoshim, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. That only that parts of Yaakov Avinu and all of the Birurim that he goes through in order to give us Nishmas Yisrael, right? Avram has Yishmael, even though he has Yitzchak. Yitzchak has Esav, even though he has Yaakov. Yaakov, in spite of the fact that there was a machlokas, which is reflective of the split within Nishmas Yisrael, which is Yosef and David, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Chochma and Bina, nevertheless, it's unified, and there's peace there. That's the secret of Nishmas Yisrael. That's the secret of Yaakov Avinu, Mitaso Shlema. And that's the real particularized parts of Zer Anpin that has the capacity of drawing down this light of the Torah, which is the source of the Ma'oros, down into the neshamos, and that's the tachlis, and that's why the Torah is revealed specifically by way of Zer Anpin. We're also going to see that the Shem Havai is by Zer Anpin, even though there's higher partsufim which have different shemos to them. How could it be that the most important name, the Shem Ha'etzem, is revealed in a partsuf that's not the essential partsuf? The answer is Zer Anpin is the biggest secret in the world. The Torah, Hashem's name, is the way in which we have the unique ability to draw down more elokus. That's Nishmas Yaakov, that's Nishmas Yisrael. The revelation of Nishmas Yisrael, which is the tachlis of the Bria, which can only come about by way of the Torah, can only be done through the parts of Zer Anpin, through Yaakov Avinu, through Nishmas Yisrael, through our felt experience, our Ava, Yir, and our Dveikus, which is Rosh Tevas Ayid. Ayid is the parts of Zer Anpin. It's the avoid of Ava, Yira, Chesed, Gvura, and Dveikus, which is Teferes, which is Rosh Tevos Ayid, Aleph Yud Dalet, Emuna, Ava, Yira, and Dveikus. Now, with this revelation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu emerged, this primordial light of the Torah that then gets shown through the parts of Zer Anpin, which is going to be the Shem of Maha Chadash. This is how the vessels are going to be rectified, and this is how all of the worlds, the Oilamos of Tikkun, are malbish over Adam Kadmon, the worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, because when we elevate from the broken places of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, we form that momentary light of Atzilus, which we know is still not the essential light of Atzilus, which will only be revealed in the future, which is the Av HaPnimi, that original Yud Chachma Keduma, which drips into Metzias nevertheless, but it's not fundamentally revealed until the coming of Mashiach. And we build the worlds, and the worlds of our avodah, each and every tefillah, each and every mitzvah is a clarification from the worlds of Atziyah back to Yitzira, back to Bria, and then being Boikeya the Parsa and bringing it back up to Olam HaAtzilus. This is the Tachlis. And this only comes about once the Torah is revealed through this Bechina of Zer Anpin. In accordance with the secret of this extension of that original desire for the creation and the rectification of the world, and it reveals itself according to its laws and its stricture, which is going to be the Tiferes. The vessels are rectified and the worlds are created. Says Ramchal, I've already explained that all other things come from Nishmas Yisrael. The same language that HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked at the Parsa and he created the world of Tikkun, this is also what it means that he looked in the Torah and created the world. Why? Because Nishmas Yisrael are embedded within the Torah. And with this we'll come to understand the mile of Nishmas Yisrael over the Malachim and Amich Kulam Sadikim, because the Iker Giloi is the light of the Tzaddik, the Iker Giloi is the light of Nishmas Yisrael. Because the tzaddikim, to be a human being down here, we have the ability to live in that realm of bechira, to be matakin the inyan in its truest form, something that the malachim themselves can't do, because they're not part of Nishmas Yisrael. The malachim don't have access to this; they only have access to the chitzonius of the belt. And that's very important because you need the chitzonius, but the pnimius is nishmas Yisrael. They're rooted in their own parts of, but they're not rooted in the parts of Zer Anpin, which is nishmas Yisrael. And this is the secret of the Tikkun Asad Lava, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to show that in truth nishmas Yisrael is far higher than the malachim. And now we're going to see what in truth is really happening here. That Tiferes of Zer Anpin receives from the Malchus of Bina, which is going to be considered the Keser of Bina, which is the Keser of Tiferes, which is how the Torah flows down. The Torah flows down from the mother. Al titosh Torah simecha. The Torah comes from Bina. The the secret of Bina that makes room for the Torah to emerge. And after explaining to us the Sharash of the Tikkun, the Ramchal is going to go into all of the particulars, and we're going to understand the particulars in accordance to our own level. And we have the confidence to understand the particulars in accordance to our own level. And the knowledge that in spite of the fact that our own level is not the Spitz level, it's not the highest level, nevertheless, wherever Yid finds themselves, if they come with earnest and they come with Tahara and they come with Kedusha to the best of their ability, then wherever they find themselves, they're being matakin what they need to be matakin, and we should be zoiche to have the words of the Ramchal be matakin us so that we can be matakin ourselves and be matakin the Welt and prepare the world for Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is a Torah Chadasha Me'iti Titze, the Torah of Atika Stima, the revelation that it's always been down here that's going to be most revelatory of the Klal.